2012 was a year of uncertainty. I think we all experienced that. Most markets suffered to one degree or another, although encouragingly the US economy and thus demand for executive search was the one sort of positive area for us. Overall global revenues declined, but some sectors and some regions continue to be strong, notably industrial, energy, which is frankly my focus, and healthcare, all three having been stalwarts really since the financial crisis. They've continued to run very healthily. In spite of the decline, the AESC estimates that the industry revenue will still be respectively close to the all-time highs that we experienced in 2008. And Peter will expand on that a little more in his presentation. Through this time of uncertainty, the AESC has still soldiered on very effectively and achieved, I think, several significant goals. We welcomed 24 new quality search firms to the association from all corners of the globe. We raised the visibility of retained search as a value-added service for executive talent, particularly in the emerging markets, and that effort is continuing. Our emerging market strategy has gained momentum with national committees operating in Asia, in Europe, in the Middle East, and in South America. We provided high-quality, relevant professional development and training, including the introduction of a new course targeted at the consultant level in conjunction with Cornell University. That was a program that Peter drove very strongly with all of us, and it turned out to be a significant success, and we'll continue with it this year. So all in all, it was a good year for the AESC. And I want to thank you, the members, for your continuing support and your involvement in the AESC and its professional efforts. Now I'd like to introduce Krista to give us an overview of the financials.
I was commenting to somebody over the last week. I've managed to work my way through 3 different seasons. Started out in a snowstorm in Madrid, flew into a spring in Bogota, then 2 days later was in full summer in lovely Sao Paulo, and now welcome into winter in New York. So I'm looking forward to that snowstorm, actually. Otherwise, my suitcase has too much in it. It's a pleasure to be here, and it certainly is an easy report to give, which, considering the fact that the association has gone through and followed and tracks through very much the ups and downs of our profession. The honor of being able to stand before you and represent the association, which is an excellent financial standing, is truly an easy place to be. So just some ideas around the accounts and some general ideas, and if there are specific questions, I'm sure Catherine Bain, our financial director, is here and certainly happy to address them as required. The budget for 2012, to put this into perspective, was $4.47 million in revenue. And the association, being a not-for-profit organization, budgets a surplus. The surplus that was budgeted is about 1.5%. In other years, it's been closer to 3%. We earmarked the difference for emerging markets, and we'll hear more about those very exciting actions that have taken place. Now, at the close of the year, actually, the final revenue figure exceeded budget. It was $4.54 million, and expenses were slightly below what was budgeted. So the interesting thing about the end of the year is not only did we exceed income, but actually the surplus was also ahead of what was budgeted. For the first time, we've asked the association actually to track where the uplift is coming from. And this might be interesting just to share with you for a moment where the ups and downs come. Now, there's a part of the uplift which is automatic, and it's targeted against cost of living increases. But what's fascinating is we're actually gaining more new membership income than we're losing. The attrition was 5.9%, and what happens to those of us who don't come back another year? Some of us retire, and some firms actually have shrunk. Out of that 5.9%, actually 3.6% have been people retiring or just leaving the profession. New firms, on the other hand, have made up for 6.2% of new income. So what we're seeing is that we're losing less firms, firms are shrinking less, and we also have new firms coming in. So it's very exciting to see where the uplift is coming from. Membership revenue fee as well was very, very solid this year. Actually, there was some concern about whether having to account for some bad debts, and there were actually none. So that's a healthy sign of not only the association, but also the member firms. Couple of points. The income for the AESC, that 4.47, roughly 1.7 are the membership fees that we pay. The other lion's share actually comes from 3 or 4 different lines of income. One is Blue Steps, another is our campus activity, the other obviously is partnerships and alliances. Now, Blue Steps accounts for over $2 million of revenue. And when Blue Steps, this is kind of like the US economy. When the US economy gets a cold, the rest of us around the world go, it's kind of the same with Blue Steps. Blue Steps is a huge part of the income for the association. And so we track very carefully new members, new candidates who join Blue Steps. And the association works very closely to promote access to Blue Steps. And there are firms here who have been very, very active in this sense. Interesting thing about Blue Steps as well, it's been a one-off subscription sort of model until this past year. And the team came up with a premium membership status, which is uplifted income as well. The interesting part there was about 25% renewal, and this started to kick in August, was budgeted. It's actually been somewhere between 47 and 50% of people signing back on. So the premium services aligned with Blue Steps not only are raising the income, but actually is indicative of the demand of top executives for the services that are provided through this platform. Campus has also been an interesting revenue line for us. The individual training programs have been off over previous years, and that is very much a sign of our own appetites as firms in terms of what we're willing to pay and what we're interested in, researcher programs, sales programs, etc. But the Cornell program was approximately $35K in revenue and very, very successful, and I understand it will repeat again this year. There are partnerships that the association has aligned with a number of different suppliers, and this is everything from specialists in designing CVs to giving advisory to members of Blue Steps. And in that interesting model where there's actually minimum investment and it's a revenue share situation, we're seeing significant growth. And we're looking forward to that actually providing more uplift during the 2013 budget. The internal audit has been finalized, and the signed accounts are here with us with no exceptions. So if anyone's interested in taking a look at those, you're welcome to do so. And in terms of our expense line, what we've found is we have been very prudent, the team has been very prudent in the use of expenses, and compensation has been on target. These events that we attend are actually budgeted as a break-even event. These are not scheduled as profit makers, but the teams tend to be very, very efficient as well. So sometimes there's a little bit of margin left over. Marketing and public relations, there was a downturn in Blue Steps around the summertime, and it was quite concerning because the new applications had dropped off significantly, and one never knows from month to month what's going to happen. Peter and the team were very, very effective and turned basically on a dime in terms of retaining expenses. When Blue Steps came back, part of the expenses that hadn't been dispersed actually remained within the organization, and part of that actually was in the area of marketing and PR that you'll see. In terms of a cash position, and finance and accounting is great, but Professor told me, Krista, cash is what's really important. The good news is that we have slightly over 6 months of operating expenses sitting in the bank. And in terms of best practice for associations, that puts us in a very comfortable position. Receivables as well have been pretty much all brought in line and have been brought in-house for 2012. So very, very good situation as we closed out the year and as we begin 2013. So hats off to the team, very, very prudent accounting measures, very, very prudent use of expense, and huge innovation around creating new added value services, which are starting to step up our income line. Okay. So I think, Peter, it's over to you.
So what I'd like to do is talk about trends in the industry. I'd like to talk about some of the challenges and opportunities that the industry faces. And I'd like to talk about AESC and its services and how we're responding to some of these challenges. So I'll whip through this fairly quickly. Hopefully won't talk too fast, but we are short of time. So first and foremost, this is a chart that many of you have seen over the years. I think it's a fantastic story, and it almost speaks for itself, but we will go through this and look a bit more in depth. This is trend information based on statistics that we collect every quarter, and as you'll see, the line has been very favorable over a period of 25 years or more. In fact, although it's been a very uncertain environment in the last year, and people have been feeling somewhat pessimistic about things, the reality is that this last year's revenue was the fourth highest ever. The highest revenue we've ever recorded through our statistics was in 2008, and that seems to comply with all the anecdotal evidence we hear. But we're only 11% off that total, that highest total. And considering the uncertainty of the last year and the whole period of the economic recession, I think that's not bad. And I think many industries would be pretty happy to report that. Now, that doesn't mean we should be complacent, but I think it's a statistic that people perhaps don't understand. There's been an awful lot of talk in the press about the fact of the search business being disintermediated and so on. We have to go back to basics and remember that, in fact, the underlying health of this industry is not that bad. Let's talk a little bit more about the distribution of this revenue. Inevitably, we have seen in the last 12 months, probably in the last 24 months, a certain amount of readjustment of market share. So inevitably, the US, North America has begun to take market share from the green slice, which is EMEA, UK, Germany, France. Asia Pacific had grown quite successfully over the previous 5 years, but has come off a bit. And Latin America always had a market share of about 7%. Now, of course, that's the total pie, which grows or declines depending on the year. The distribution by industry is interesting because, again, I think it confirms what we've been hearing from our members, that financial services, which for so long was the largest sector by far, has just tumbled off the cliff, sadly. And it's been replaced as the largest sector by industrial. So industrial is there at 27% market share on a global basis, followed by consumer products and financial services being pretty much on a par, and then technology and healthcare. It's not surprising, I think, to people to see this, but as Jim mentioned, through the recession, there have been some very strong sectors that have almost been recession-proof, but other sectors, particularly financial services, have suffered fairly dramatically, and we don't see much improvement there, although there are some glimmers of light. Going on, if you look at the trends over the last 8 years, and again, this may be a little too much detail, but if you want to see these charts, please let me know to look at them in more detail. But the distribution, the top line is North America, the second line is Europe, then Asia Pacific, and then Latin America. But the trend lines have been fairly obvious, and certainly, as you can see, in the last couple of years, North America has taken market share, and Europe, EMEA, has fallen away. Sector trends, and again, over the last 8 years, you'll have seen a variation, which again I've mentioned in terms of financial services and industrial, but the basic lines are fairly indicative of what we know to be true, which is that the sectors attract, retain search at different times and in different places around the world. But certainly at the moment, industrial is looking strong, and we hope that will continue. In terms of outlook, we do 6-monthly outlook surveys, and you can see very clearly here over the last 5 years how sentiment has changed. The purple is positive, the blue is neutral, and the orange is negative. Now, very, very clearly, as we came out of 2011, the mood changed dramatically. And I can remember certainly at the beginning of 2012, people were very, very uncertain, really quite pessimistic. Sadly, that hasn't changed dramatically. So we're still uncertain. There's still this feeling of it's not as good as we would like, and we're really not sure, where the revenue is coming from. But I do detect, actually, in the discussions that we have in the last few months, that actually there's a little bit of improvement. But those bar charts there show you that from our general outlook survey taken in December last year, basically people weren't feeling very positive about 2013. A few words about the market and the environment within which we all work. The AESC over the last few years has conducted a number of studies, and I've mentioned these before, but I think it's important because we all talk about the changing marketplace. We all talk about the whole issue of the client relationship changing and so on and so on. We did 2 studies. One was called Executive Search and Transition, and the other was called The Client Speaks. And I think from those, they confirmed, again, what we probably knew to be true, but it's always interesting to see this in data. But they confirmed that on the opportunity side, on the positive side, looking at the brighter lands, if you like, very clear that the clients have changed their opinion of where they want retained search to be for them and what kind of service they want. It was very, very clear that above 200,000, and particularly above the 300,000 salary level, this is an indicator, of course, on a worldwide basis, but it was very clear that that's where the clients wanted the help, and that's where they saw the real added value. Below that, contingency even, but certainly in-house recruiting for the big firms was a perfectly acceptable alternative for them. And this has caused obviously quite a lot of angst in the executive search community, and we can talk more about that. But it's very clear that that's where the clients are looking for the help, and obviously the response to that must be, well, that's obviously where we should focus our attention. The other good thing, and I think when you're looking very broadly at how executive search has fared in the last 10, 15, 20 years, but more and more organizations are using executive search. We have to remind ourselves of this. Right across all sectors, government, non-profit, sports, you name it. There are very few organizations today of any standing that don't use executive search to find their CEOs, to find their critical executives. And I think we have to remember that. The other obvious thing that we know to be true is that more markets are opening up around the world. It always amazes me. I hear that I was in London talking to one of our members only last week. I said, well, how are things going? And he said, oh, busy as hell. And he's in financial services. So I said, well, where and what? He said, well, I got 4 searches going on in Nigeria. And I said, whoa, okay, that's very interesting. There's a lot of work going on in Angola, Vietnam. People are setting up offices all over the world in places that 10 years ago you would never have considered possible. This is a really interesting story, and it's one actually that we don't talk about enough, and it's something perhaps we can do more of at the AESC. But the public doesn't get it, doesn't know that in fact the footprint for executive search has grown hugely in the last few years. This is the other story, that we try to do what we can to get out to the media, that in fact our revenues are being sustained despite volatility in the economy. And this is something we're trying to communicate to the media, who keep on in the last 6 months banging away at in-house recruiting. There was an article just yesterday from the FT. How many people saw that? calling, I can't remember the name of the article now, but it's something about heads being hunted in different ways. And essentially, the message was, you know, you guys are going to be disintermediated unless you're really, really good and you're working right at the top. So we've been responding to these kinds of articles and saying, well, look at the facts. And by the way, how about talking to the industry association before you write your article? They don't like that when we say that. And then they don't publish our letter, but that's okay. Firms are offering a broader range of services. We know that, and it's a very interesting development, and clients are responding positively to that. Where that will lead remains to be seen, but it's a very useful, interesting development. And of course, by the way, the tagline of the AESC has been changed to expand to include leadership consulting. And this is the other thing that, again, is not generally recognized, I think, in the media. There is a global talent shortage, and I think we've got to talk more about it. It was a big hot topic 15 years ago when McKinsey published the War for Talent study. We need to talk more about this because it's really important. And clients, essentially clients know this, but it's important that they get it and that we market that as a key USP when we're talking about our services. And of course, industry restructuring is always helpful. I can't even think of how many industries are restructuring right now. You name it. I mean, you know, technology, media, healthcare, it goes on. And this is excellent for executive search. However, obviously, there are challenges. And I'll quickly run through them. You know what they are. And obviously, we have to respond and to work out how to move the goalposts to respond to some of these challenges. But obviously, the growth of in-house recruiting is taking some market share, but not nearly as much as the media would like to suggest. The commoditization of the lower end of search, we've been talking about this for 10 years. Of course, it's happened. It will continue to happen, and purchasing a part of that process, and they will act as the filter for our services. So we know that it's very difficult to promote retained search in the emerging markets, but that's part of the goal of the AESC. We're doing what we can, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. We obviously there is a requirement to differentiate and show the added value. It was never the case. 10 years, 15 years ago, it wasn't so necessary. But now it is. It's almost as if we have to remarket ourselves. And this is crucial, I think, to all firms, whether they're large, medium, or small. We've got to do a better job of communicating the differentiation and the added value of retained search. So essentially, we've got to take search back to its consulting roots and remind clients that we are management consultants. That's where it came from. That's where search came from. We're not transaction recruiters. We're management consultants. We have to brand the profession because unless we do, we won't protect our margins. And this is absolutely fundamental. We don't want to be disintermediated. We do not want to be commoditized. And of course, the margins are crucial to maintain the quality of service and the people in this business that are absolutely essential. We've got to continue to raise standards, and I think that we can all help here. Certainly the AESC will do what it can, but everyone has got to watch very closely that standards don't fall, because that's when disintermediation occurs. And of course, the other big challenge is we have to build the future generation. And I think many firms are wrestling with that challenge right now. I'm going to go very quickly through what the AESC is actually doing to help in addressing some of these challenges, and just remind you some of the services we do offer. First and foremost, we are a global web-based service organization. I think that's very clear today. I hope it's understood, and therefore our websites are a key source of information about what we do. We are the association that promotes the highest standards in executive search. There is no other. And I think this is important to remember too. If you're in a profession, it makes sense to have a professional association. At least I think people would agree with that for all kinds of reasons. But there is only one. There is one professional body for this industry, and this is it. And if this doesn't survive, there won't be another. why would we say that? Because we know how difficult it is to build organizations like this. And we have, in fact, because of the growth and strength of the AESC, we've actually replaced national organizations which had come together in years gone by when they felt they needed some representation. Germany, France have collapsed their national organizations because the AESC is now there and can represent the industry. This is fundamentally important. What are we doing? Well, we're in 3 regions around the world. I think everyone knows that structure. We have 3 audiences: our members, search community, the client community, and the candidate community. And we offer a range of activities for these different communities. Emerging markets, really important, because there's the opportunity here to get on the ground floor, where the market is not educated, does not understand retained search, and needs help. Our members need help. Now, the needle is moving in the emerging markets. There are more and more clients who are using retained search, but what we need to do is to keep pushing and keep raising the profile. And we're doing that via national committees in Brazil, India, China, and the Middle East, through partnerships with business schools around the world. We now have over 30 business schools that we have connections with, and a growing number of these are in the emerging markets, with chambers of commerce and other organizations that we can use as a platform and as an audience to talk to about retained search. And for example, in China, we have a very good link with the State Administration for Foreign Experts, and indeed, as a result of that, I'm delighted that we have with us one of our guests today, Dr. Henry Wang, who's sitting over here, who is very closely involved with SAFIA and the kind of work they're doing. You'll hear more from him later. And then examples of emerging market activity. We have conferences and meetings. Our next conference, as a matter of fact, will be in Istanbul, but we have meetings in China, in India, in the Middle East, and so on. Educating clients is really important, and we do have a website which is called Corporate Connect, and there we put all information about that would be relevant to clients. And there's a whole list of those documents, and I think many of you do use them, but it's up to you, whether you use them or whether the clients will consider them to be relevant. But these are the lists of documents that we have so far. The Candidate Bill of Rights, the Client Bill of Rights, which is well used, the Retained versus Contingency document, which has been up there for about a year, well used actually, particularly in emerging markets. Corporate Connect is a portal. Please use it. If you think we can improve it, tell us. It's got a whole range of services, and if you go there, you'll see that a whole range of corporations use it, almost 1,000 actually. They go there, they use our directory, they look for members, and of course all your detail is included in our directory of members. And that's important because we can see that clients are using that directory. We also run alongside that directory the RFP service, and if a client wants to find a search firm in a new sector or region, then they will use that RFP service. And last year we referred about $2 million in fees through that, and we're looking to increase that over the coming year using search engine optimization and so on. Then, of course, we have Blue Steps. You're all familiar with Blue Steps. It's crucially important to the AESC, but much more importantly, it's a free service to you. It's a database that is actually quite powerful because it's high quality and it has a lot of cross-border candidates in it. And certainly when you're doing a search, use Blue Steps. It's free, and if you find 1 or 2 candidates, you've probably justified your fee for the AESC. And certainly if you get a search through our RFP process, you've certainly justified your fee for the year. So use these services because they are useful. I believe they are, we believe they are, and many of our members believe they are too. Professional development we've talked about, and we're very pleased that we have now expanded the curriculum, not just research or associate training, and Rachel Roach, who has been very involved in that for years. Rachel, stand up and just, I think many people know Rachel. has done a wonderful job in building the Researcher Associate Program. If you haven't used it, then talk to people who have, because we get high ratings for it. There's also the Cornell program. It's been mentioned. It received very high grade last year from the 32 people who attended, 22 firms, 11 countries around the world. It was really quite exciting for consultants. And the most recent development is that we've just launched a program. It's an online modular program with Andrew Sobel, who's an expert in building clients for life. That's really the content of his program. And if you want to know more, we have information about that. But I think you'll find it very affordable and a very good way of putting certainly your more junior consultants, but even your senior consultants, a reminder of how to build clients for life. So I think that's very important, and we hope you'll find that useful. Other membership benefits: we continue with our government and legal monitoring service. We can't always catch everything that's going on around the world, but we rely on our members to tell us if there's an issue. Please let us know. We obviously continue with our conferences worldwide, and we also, of course, sorry, I missed something there, didn't I? We do a lot of PR work, which, again, is important because it raises the profile of the industry. We get a lot of press coverage. We get quite a lot of interviews, and we're very, very active in social media and other forms of internet leverage that really can make a difference. So the word is out. The world is much more aware of the AESC, and we're doing what we can to build the image of the industry and to promote it. Now, the final question is, well, what can you do to help? We can't do it all on our own, and it's crucial, in our view, that the members of the association help in projecting the value, obviously, of retained search. You need to do that anyway in your day-to-day activities, and it's crucially important from our point of view that you help brand the AESC. So I would ask that you really do what you can in terms of ideas and suggestions, in participation, helping national committees, and so on, because without you, we can't achieve the job on your behalf. And I think that's really the message that I want to convey. A lot of activity in 2012, a lot more activity in 2013 to come, and we look forward very much to working with you to promote and further our mutual interests. So thank you very much.